This is an incredible main event. This is what we've all been waiting for. This is what we show up. This is what we love the sport for. This is what, the UFC is all about. And for a lot of you people watching, this is what brought you guys into the sport. Now, I was in the sport long before McGregor came around. I loved the sport. I've always loved it. I was watching this stuff back in the Fedor days, back in the Chuck Liddell days, back in the Bas Rutten days. I've been around for a long time watching this shit. But when McGregor came around, immediately, I think just like a lot of people, we all just fell in love with this amazing Irish character. And it was just like this fucking thing we've never seen. He was literally the 21st century version of Muhammad Ali. And in my opinion, even cooler and smarter and clever and wittier than Ali. And arguably even more talented than Ali in a lot of ways. In the last few years, for anyone who came on later and just saw McGregor the last couple of years, you don't know what we're talking about. The guys who've been around when McGregor was in his prime, but prime McGregor was just on a whole different level. It was just like watching. It's hard to describe. It was almost like watching magic before your very eyes. Like this guy said what he was gonna do, and he went out and just fucking did it. He said he was gonna KO Aldo in the first round. He went out, KO'd him in the first 10 seconds. He said he was gonna run through Eddie Alvarez, ran right through him and KO'd him in the second round. He said he was going to do all these incredible things, and he just went out and did it. He spoke all these things into existence. He had the most confidence you've ever seen anybody ever have. The guy was just fucking unbelievable, impressive, and he just motivated you. He inspired you. When you see somebody working and performing at such an elite level, it inspires something incredible out of you. And that's what he did to so many people, so many of us fans. He inspired some, like, us to want to be great as well. And that's why we loved him. But here's the thing. As much as I say all that, I say this because I want McGregor to win. I'm not going to hide that at all. I love the guy. I think he's incredible. But despite all his flaws, and he's a human being, and he's got many, many flaws, and he's done a lot of crazy shit, and, a lot of bad things. He's got court cases and fights outside of the cage, and different charges, and of course doing things, blowing things up his nose and just doing wild shit. He's a wild man. And that's why we love him too, by the way. But he's a wild man. But 5 years out of the octagon, and in the last time you were in the octagon, you shattered your leg, and you were losing, starting to lose, not by a huge amount, but you were starting to get pieced up by Dustin Poirier. And it was really starting to look again like not the first fight, but the fight right before that with Poirier, which was actually their second fight, where Poirier really started piecing you up and KO'd you. And it wasn't quite that level, but it was starting to look very similar to that second fight. And then all of a sudden you shattered your leg. Horrible, tragic, very sad. But it's been 5 years of partying, of chaos, of arrests, of cases, of all kinds of crazy shit, businesses and millions of dollars, and just focusing on other things rather than focusing on fighting and your health. And it's great that the past year or 6 months that you've found God and you've gotten back into family and gotten back into focusing on your health and training again. But looking at someone like Max Holloway, who's taken this 100% seriously the last 15 years of his career, and including the last 5, and fought nothing but the top guys, he just is in the rhythm. He's performing at an elite level. McGregor's basically just coming off the street, coming off the couch a few months ago, and trying to hop into this and perform at that elite level, and it just doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way. And not to mention, even aside from all those things, even aside from the 5-year layoff, and aside from the the hardcore powders going up your nose and parties that you've been attending and all these crazy things, habits you've been doing, aside from all those things alone, just looking at how Max has evolved in the past 10 years since their first fight compared to how McGregor has evolved. McGregor peaked a couple of years after their fight, and his peak was like Eddie Alvarez, Aldo, Alvarez era, right around that time. And then after that, it was like Nate Diaz 2, I believe it was like Nate Diaz. I guess he fought Diaz within the Eddie Alvarez era, so you could say that was actually still peak McGregor, which doesn't really look great because he gassed out in that first fight, and then he looked very, human in the second fight. He did win the second fight, but it wasn't like an overwhelmingly one-sided performance. It wasn't dominant. But anyways, McGregor peaked around that time. Holloway just kept going steadily, not like to the moon, skyrocket, but steadily improving, every year, and fighting guys like Volkanovski, fighting all the top 145ers and beating the piss out of them. The Calvin Kattar fight comes to mind. Fighting some of the 155, and then of course the Gaethje fight where he beat the piss out of Gaethje for 5 rounds, and then not even KO'd him with one of the best KOs of all time in the last minute of that fight, the last 5 seconds of the fight. UFC 300 it was, right? So he's just fought the who's who. He's lost a couple of them, like guys like Charles Oliveira, who wanted to just crotch sniff him for 5 rounds, did beat him. But like on most of the fights, when he's fighting these elite level, number 1 pound for pound type of guys, he's winning a lot of these fights, Or if he's not winning, he's super, super competitive. Even the Volkanovski fights, all those fights are super competitive. So that's the level he's been performing at for years and years and years, and he's never taken, an extended period of time off. McGregor has taken all this time off, and he hasn't been active. And he hasn't been training, and he hasn't been taking care of his own health. And the other thing is, too, here's a quick few other things that I don't like about this fight for McGregor coming back in. So the number one thing is the styles. When they were younger and Max wasn't refined and Conor was at his peak pretty much, it didn't really matter. But their styles are different now, and Max is at his peak still, and Conor isn't at his peak anymore. He's just not. He wasn't at his peak 5 years ago, and you don't take 5 years off and then come back and then suddenly just like revert back to being in your peak. It just doesn't work that way, sadly. But Max's style is one of pressure. It's one of durability. It's one of relentlessness. It's one of volume. It's all of these things, especially the durability and the stamina. It's all these things that McGregor never had, and even in his peak never had, and to this day right now doesn't have. So that's number one, is the stamina is the biggest thing that stands out. Max Holloway can easily go 5 rounds. He could probably easily go 10 rounds, to be honest. He just doesn't slow down. McGregor can go like 1 to 2 rounds. If this was a 3-round fight, I probably would pick McGregor. Or I would very, very much consider it. I'd very much consider picking McGregor. And he even tried to make it 3 rounds because he even knows, I think, inside that this 5-round thing is a killer for him. He's just not good in 5-round fights. And so that's the thing. This is a 5-round fight. That's the number one thing. It heavily favors Holloway big time. That's number one. Number two is all the partying, the 5 years off, the ring rust. All that stuff is a major factor. You just can't overlook that. Especially that's number two. Number three is the age, which I was about to say is, along with number two. But number three is the age. McGregor is getting old. He's like 38, maybe even 39 years old. He's getting old. I think he's 38. Holloway's not young, but he's not old yet. He's like 33, 34. I think he's 3 years younger. He might be 34. I do have it up, actually. $34. So Max is still 34. McGregor's 37. He's turning 38 in like fucking 5 days. So he's 38 years old for all intents and purposes. Max Holloway is 34. 38 years old, you're not in your prime anymore. You're slowing down. Your reflexes are slowing down. Your speed's slowing down. Your chin's going down. All these things. Holloway is not in his prime yet. I mean, still, arguably, although he's just barely out of it. Like, he's basically still there. So that's the other point. And furthermore, McGregor has these veneers. And I've looked this up, and I can't say for sure, like 100%. But I did a deep dive into it. I've heard some different things, read some articles and stuff. Veneers are not good for your chin when it comes to taking a punch. They just mess with the jaw structure and how you can take a punch, how you're holding it, the bones and stuff in your jaw. It changes like the structure and the way they sit on the jaw. And when you get punched, like how everything sort of like is supposed to be strong and stable and intact. When you have these veneers, it changes the structure and the way like your jaw like closes and can be like a solid uniform thing. So if it's like even a little microscopically loose compared to being solidly tight, if it's a little bit loose and you're taking those punches, you have a higher chance of a number one, breaking your jaw, and number two, getting rocked more because your jaw is not in place. It's not as sturdy as it would be. So that's the other thing. The veneer thing, I don't like the fact that he's got veneers now. Other guys like Dustin Poirier as well. I don't think these guys knew that potentially it can mess with your ability to take a shot before they got them. I just wish he didn't have them. I don't think it's the end of the world, but I do think it's one more thing that adds to this. The other thing as well is I believe he had a hair transplant. This has been reported. I could be wrong on this, but I'm like 90% sure, 95% sure that I saw some like reports of him getting a hair transplant just a couple of months ago, and like the hair was like just starting to grow in a couple of months ago, which means if that was the case, you have to take a period of time off after you get the transplant because it's a major surgery. And if that's the case, he got the transplant either just before he started training camp or in the middle, like early of part of his like training camp. And if that's the case, I'm telling you, like, it's not a good idea to be doing major surgery if you're training for this. It swells up your head. It swells up, like, you know, the area around your hair and the sides and stuff. They pluck the hair from the back of the head. They put it to the front. Swells up the back of the head. He wasn't in serious training for at least several weeks while he got that. And even afterwards, it's, like, very tender on your head. And that's just not a good thing. And even, like, now, like, I don't think it's, like, today it's going to affect him to take a shot. But if that's affecting him in some way throughout his training camp, that's messing up his training camp. It's messing up his timing. It's messing up his ability to go full contact. It's messing up his ability to take shots. So he's backing off. He's taking it easy. He's not having a full-on training camp like Max Holloway is having a full-on training camp. And I think that plays a factor. That's something nobody else has talked about. But when I saw that, I just thought in my head, it's not a good idea to be having a major surgery. And I know it's not like, the end of the world surgery, like, or major surgery like it was on his leg, but it's still a major surgery. It's not a good idea to have major surgery when you're going up against Max Holloway, and it's either the beginning or middle of your training camp. I have to say that. So to me, there's like at least 4 to 5 major reasons why Max is going to win this fight. And again, I hope Conor wins. I hope that I'm wrong with this. And there's still a good chance, like, that he could pull it off. I just don't see it. And by the way, here's the last one. I forgot to actually mention this one. The fact that Conor just doesn't quite seem the same as he did before, in his prime especially. With his trash talk, with his confidence, with his swagger, with his ability to come in and seeming to be hungry. He just doesn't seem to be as hungry as he was years ago. He doesn't seem to be getting after it as much. He almost seems to be in his interviews, although there's glimpses of, confidence, there's glimpses of the old Conor. It seems like he's almost hedging his bets. Almost like he's saying, like, unconsciously, like, not putting himself out there as much because he subtly, like, unconsciously knows, like, I don't want to make a fool of myself. He doesn't want to, like, have another Poirier moment where he got knocked out unconscious. Or another Poirier, the third fight where he shattered his leg and was laying in the ring helplessly. It almost seems to me like he's timid, and not like a typically timid way, but a Conor McGregor timid way. He's just a little hesitant on the things that he's saying. He's not as confident. He's not as, like, dialed into, like, like destroying this guy in front of him. He's just a little more like hedging. He's hedging his bets a little bit more because I think he knows in the back of his mind that there is a good chance that he's going to lose. Conor McGregor in his prime had no doubt he was going to win. Zero doubt that he was going to win. And that was a big part of his mystique. And he was so confident that I think he was able to convince his opponent oftentimes that his opponent was going to lose, and it got into their heads. All the trash talk and all this and that, things that he would say, also got into their heads. But I genuinely think that a major part of it all was his confidence, and just instilling that confidence into his opponent was enough to get them second guessing, and then have him on top of his game while they were on the bottom of their game. and that's what often led to their defeat. So for this fight, though, I do predict Max Holloway win. I think Conor's going to gas out in the second, maybe third round. I think he's going to slow down at the end of the first, slow down in the second for sure. He might last past the second and get TKO'd in the third round or after the third round. I don't think this is going to go past 3 rounds. I do see a TKO either after the round ends and he just doesn't come up from the stool and that's it, or he crashes out, gasses out in like the middle of probably like the end of the second round or early third round, sadly. And I think Max is either going to TKO him, or he could even throw up the submission and just like guillotine him and tap him out like a Nate Diaz type of moment. Nate Diaz one fight. Very sad though. I genuinely hope I'm wrong. I hope McGregor catches him in the first round and puts his lights out. I'll be the happiest guy in the world if that happens, believe it or not. But I do think, Max is going to take this one. So my official prediction is, we'll say Max by most likely chances. We'll say Max by third round TKO, middle of the round. Yeah, we'll say third round TKO, middle of the round. Although I could definitely see that submission going up. But Max got heavier hands at a heavier weight class. Yeah, we'll say I think he might Poirier him. I think it's more likely that he Poiriers him, Poirier 2, than he Diaz's him, Diaz 1. So we'll say third round TKO. Sadly, I think McGregor's going to go down and get put unconscious or semi-unconscious before they stop it. So that's my prediction. I hope I'm wrong on that, though. I genuinely hope McGregor wins. It's good for the sport if he wins. It's good for everybody except for Max and Max's family, but it's good for everybody else pretty much in the world if McGregor wins this fight, including me and including fight fans all over. But I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown. Make sure you subscribe to the channel right now for more fight topics, MMA news, takes, hot takes, all that stuff. I'm going to be putting out a ton of more videos in the upcoming days and weeks, so subscribe now, and I hope you enjoyed the channel.